Good morning and welcome to the October 20th, 2021 Transportation, Infrastructure, and Planning Subcommittee. Let's start with call to the public. Is there any?
Councilwoman Stark, members of the subcommittee, we do not have any registered speakers for call to the public.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to approval of minutes. May I have an action?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The minutes pass. The next items, 2 through 5, are on our consent, but I believe we have speakers for item 4 and 5. So why don't we go ahead and hear from the speakers and then we can take action.
For item 4, we have Bramley Paulin registered to speak. Bramley, are you on the line?
Good morning. Before the clock starts for my time, and since there's no presentation on item 4, would you please put up on the screen attachment B, which I believe is page 24.
Are we able to do that?
Madam Chair, yes, we're working on pulling that up now.
Okay, thank you.
Chairwoman, and as they're pulling that up, I had some questions on item 3 once we're done with this item.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Item.
On item 3.
No, right now. Is that 3?
We've got the attachment showing for attachment B on item 4.
Yes, thank you. If I may continue.
Yes, please.
In subtask 2.1, it says build trust and relationships. That sounds great, and I would hope that this is to be expected from the city on any project at all times. However, management is off to a horrible start. If you look at the description of subtask 3.3, you will see a reference to the Walkable Urban Code. The Walkable Code is not a zoning option that is permissible in this area nor any area outside of the original light rail stations. While management is in the process of seeking input and recommendations from all of the villages with the proposed text amendment to expand the Walkable Code citywide, to date, 12 of the villages have heard staff's presentation on the amendment. 8 have voted to deny the expansion. What is most insulting about all of this process, as the city talks about building trust, some villages have not yet heard the presentation on the amendment, so they have not had an opportunity to vote on its expansion. Yet, in today's meeting, you are voting to move forward, supposedly with community involvement and trust building, by using the Walkable Code that has little support. I again refer you to the description of subtask 3.3. Here we are again with the city playing a game of Johnny Carson's Karnak. It is clear that management has already predetermined the answer and will make up any questions or answers necessary to receive federal grants as it moves along with the program outlined in this RFP. This is disgusting. This is a citywide text amendment, yet there has been no citizen involvement. No citizen participation whatsoever. I'm curious to know what the city is telling the federal agency who funds these transportation grants when addressing the required.
Chairwoman, you're on mute.
Thank you. I believe we also have a speaker on item 5.
Councilwoman Stark, We do also have a speaker for item number 5. Once again, it's Bramley Paulin, and he is registered as a neutral position for that item as well. Bramley, are you on the line?
Yes, I'll finish my comments. I'm curious to know what the city is telling the federal agency who funds these transportation grants when addressing the requirement for the city to have citizen outreach and participation. Either way, management is sending a very clear message to its volunteer village committee members by ignoring the very same input that the city has asked of them. Can management not wait until after all the villages have had an opportunity to vote? Then, regardless of the villages, the planning commission, and the lack of any citizen participation, you will undoubtedly move forward with your own agenda. I call upon you to do the right thing by immediately terminating the walkable code text amendment until after all of the steps outlined in this RFP have been completed citywide. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Now we'll go back to item 3. I believe you had some questions, Councilwoman?
Yes, I did. I don't know if Jesus is there.
Yes, Madam Chair, Jesus Sapien is up at the table to answer questions.
Perfect. Okay, well, I was just going through this item, just had, hopefully you could answer this for me, Jesus. Do we know right now how many buses are currently nearing end of their life cycle?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Guardado, yes, under this particular contract, we are anticipating the replacement of between 40 and 60 buses per year. For the first 3 years of this particular contract, it would be 40 buses per year.
Okay, and that's how many have to now be replaced because of their ending of life cycle?
Correct, Councilwoman Guardado. What we do is, because these vehicles are federally funded, we follow the FTA's guidance, which is once a bus reaches a life cycle of 12 years or 500,000 miles, it is eligible for retirement. So we anticipate having between 40 and 45 in the coming year that will need replacement.
Okay, and then my other question was, why did the RFP only include compressed natural gas buses and not electric or electric hybrid buses?
Councilwoman Guardado, thank you for that question. You may recall that earlier this year, we came to subcommittee and to formal council to request to issue this RFP, and basically it was to replace the current fleet. If you look at item 2, we are doing exactly what you are saying, which is to go out and poll the transit industry to see what other vehicles might be available as a viable option in terms of operational needs for our area, which is both geographic and climate in nature. The purpose of this particular item, item 3, is to replace our existing fleet. I know we've had some conversations with this subcommittee as well as full council over the years about how we as a department continue testing other viable fleets or rather propulsion systems in our environment. Right now, our fleet is made up 2/3 natural gas, 1/3 diesel, and that has worked well for us, not only as a city, but as a region. But we do want to try new technology, and that's what item 2 points to, which is to kind of poll the industry to see what type of other propulsion systems might be viable for our operational needs.
But wouldn't we find that out as well if we included electrical in this RFP as we're trying to move more to electrical buses?
Yes, Councilwoman Guardado, particular to this RFP, we did issue it specifically to replace our existing fleet, because we know that ordering buses takes about 15 months or more. I will tell you right now, with supply chain issues, it's probably going to be a little longer. So we want to do the research and implementation of new technology in parallel with how long it takes to replace our existing fleets.
Right. So then what you're saying is that we would have natural gas and electrical at the same time?
Yes.
Because these, okay.
I'm sorry. Yes,
go
Councilwoman
ahead.
Guardado, we can certainly implement that new type of technology when we find that it is viable for our region. And that, again, is the purpose of item 2. What we want to do is basically obtain a smaller contingent of fleet and test them on a long-term basis as part of a pilot program for our overall fleet.
Got it. So you're saying that we need to test it first. We need to figure out which is the best to use before we actually go and we put out an RFP. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Before we purchase them in large quantities, we need to test them on a long-term basis in our environment. When we came to subcommittee earlier this year to request to issue this RFP, Councilwoman Pastor astutely pointed out that the school districts are doing the same thing. They are trying electric buses and finding out that they do not have the range, in other words, how far they can go in between charges to meet our environment, our climate, basically. And we've been doing the same thing on our own and jointly with Valley Metro. We've been testing these buses in our environment. They're close. The technology certainly has improved over the past few years, but it's just not quite where it needs to be in terms of how far buses need to go in our region, both in terms of geography, because our routes are long, and because of range, again, how far they can go on a single charge, and to support the air conditioning needs and things like wheelchair ramps and lifts and things like that that we have as part of our everyday operating fleet. So yes, the intent of item 2 is to test a smaller subfleet, find what works best for our region, and then subsequently basically roll that out on a greater scale once we identify the propulsion system that meets our operational needs.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Jesus.
Thank you for the questions.
Madam Chair,
Oh,
go ahead.
Councilwoman
Go ahead.
Pastor.
Go ahead.
I'm recognizing you, Councilwoman Pastor.
Okay, since I know we're talking about 3, but we're bouncing in between item 2 and 3. Am I through this conversation? What I'm interpreting or what I'm hearing about item 3 is that this RFP already went out, and this RFP did not include the green transit technology or the electrical pieces. Is there a possibility to add it in there, or it's too late because we've already did an RFP and now we're awarding?
Very good question, Councilwoman Pastor. I actually asked that question of my procurement staff yesterday. We would be purchasing off this RFP only either diesel or CNG. And just a reminder on the diesel side, we do biodiesel, but that's 1/3 of our fleet. The other two-thirds is CNG. We issued it for that particular technology, again, for the purpose of replacing our existing fleet. So we would not be able to amend that contract to include new technology, but with item 2, we are absolutely able to do that, explore any type of propulsion technology that might be out there.
So sorry, Madam Chair, can I continue?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So item 2 is really filling in that gap then?
Absolutely, yes, you are correct, Councilwoman.
Okay. So we will be doing both the green transit technology because there is an ad hoc committee that is moving and is looking into this. This is where we will fill the gap with item 3.
Councilwoman Pastor, that is correct. As a matter of fact,
Okay.
just last night at the ad hoc electric vehicle subcommittee, we, as well as other departments, Public Works and Aviation, we gave the subcommittee an overview of what our fleet currently looks like and what other technology we are exploring in terms of making the transition to electric fleet or any other type of propulsion system that we find efficient, affordable, and again, meets our operational needs in this region. I will tell you that I serve on a couple of American Public Transit Association committees, and this is a nationwide discussion that's going on. And what we found is that electric technology, as well as others, are applicable to some environments, but here in the Southwest, Arizona and Nevada, primarily because of our upgraded air conditioning systems, it's a little bit trickier, but we continue to test the technology and have those back and forth discussions with the equipment manufacturers, engine and bus, to see what might work for us in the short and long term.
Okay, and you're correct. It is a national conversation, and really the conversation here is really our weather and how intense it is, and really identifying where we're going to have midway stops to it's not refuel, but be able to do electrical buses and then switch from that bus to the next bus to be able to do the whole long haul of the 24/7 of those buses.
Exactly, and that, Councilwoman Pastor, you're absolutely right. That's one thing I described to the subcommittee last night was how our transit system operates in terms of buses being on the street the majority of the day, and then coming back during the late hours to have the maintenance done on them. So they're out on the street a really long time and travel large distances. So our operational needs are great.
Which I'm assuming we will then have to, in the green one, eventually we will figure out that we're going to have to probably have double our size. That's what I'm hearing.
Unless there is a technology that meets our needs without having to increase our fleet, that's something that we would look at.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Any other, Councilwoman Guardado?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, no, I mean, I understand everything that you're saying, Jesus. And look, and I get it that I appreciate all the work that you're doing, all the work that everyone does in transit. I mean, it's been, we're always looking, how do we become more innovative? But I am, I am a little concerned because when I looked at this item and then I looked at item number 2, we are voting to approve 250 city buses powered by compressed natural gas. But at the same time, we have an entire ad hoc committee established to look at expansion of electric vehicles in Phoenix, which includes goals for the electrification of the city's vehicle fleet, which, at the same time, it's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? In terms of the heat, right? Like we know, right, that having, electrical buses is going to reduce the heat. We've talked about, we have a whole plan in terms of how do we deal with this, from our roadways to our buses. But I believe this is just, and I don't even know how to say this, just maybe a little bit inconsistent with their strategic goals, right? I mean, I get it that we need the buses. I get it that we need to prepare. I mean, the last thing we want to do is be the city that doesn't have buses for our constituents because we didn't order them on time. So I always appreciate the preparation for all of this and being professional and always doing the right thing. But not only due to the hard work of Councilwoman Ansari is doing in sharing this ad hoc committee, but I also have had further questions, or will have further questions on how this aligns with our recently adopted climate action plan. I understand that this is not locking us in, to a full amount at this time, but I think that we need to figure out how we are able to accelerate the green transit technology request proposal, and if there's a way to combine both, and look at, and I think that being green, being efficient, it might cost a little bit more. Probably Councilwoman Pastor is right that there is a chance that we might need 2 set of buses, and that's something where we need to start educating constituents about, where this might have a little bit of a higher cost, and we need to be ready to support you as you're trying to meet the needs of the different plans that we're actually adopting, given the climate changes. But, another thing that I just saw yesterday was my friend, Councilman Frankie Heredia, and over in Mesa, and his colleagues approved the purchase of the first electric fire truck in the nation. And I think we need to ensure that we're taking, similar steps to reduce carbon emission. with our city when examining contracts of this size. And again, I appreciate the work that you're doing. I know that you guys are working hard every single day. And you know that by no means do I mean any disrespect to any of you guys, just because you guys do a lot of hard work and you guys are trying to keep up with all of us at the same time. And I know that's not an easy task. But I definitely think that I'm not sure how I can support this item until we are presented with the EV readiness roadmap in the spring, and we can ensure such large items are in line with our city's vision. And I'm not exactly sure how do we do that right now, given a little bit of the inconsistency. I want to be able to be supportive, but how do we move this forward then?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Guardado, one of the things that I would point out is exactly what you said is, even though this is a 5-year contract for a maximum of 265 buses, we do have language in the RFP that does not commit us to purchasing all 5 years of those. Those are just estimates based on vehicles meeting the end of their useful life. So if we do find another viable technology in the middle of the contract, for example, that can replace it, we will have a discussion with you at that time to make that change. The other thing I would mention is thank you for the acknowledgement of the hard work we're doing relative to keeping an eye on the technology, because that is one of the reasons we have 2/3 fleet operating on natural gas. In the late 1990s, 1998 I believe it was, is when Phoenix started incorporating the country's largest liquefied natural gas fleet. We made that change because we did want to move away from diesel. And then in the early 2010s, about 2013, we had an in-depth discussion with council about transitioning from liquefied natural gas to compressed natural gas, because that's where the industry was making the transition to. So we have moved away from things like older type diesel technology. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the 1/3 of the fleet that we do operate on diesel is biodiesel. So we have 100% alternative fleet fuel right now on the heavy duty side. So again, to alleviate perhaps the concern that's there, we don't have a commitment to purchase all 5 years worth. If we find a technology mid-contract that can replace these buses and meet our operational needs, we can absolutely make that switch.
And is that part of the is that in the packet?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Guardado, it's in the RFP language.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, any other question? Councilwoman O'Brien? You're on mute.
Thank you. So sorry. Jesus, what would happen if we don't move forward with this RFP?
Councilwoman O'Brien, thank you for that question. I will tell you that our two kind of, in my mind, biggest commitments in terms of keeping our fleet fresh, number one is to our passengers. We want to make sure that our buses are replaced on a regular basis so that we have the latest technology. We have buses that have long availability times, and newer buses have that, and that they travel longer. We found with CNG buses, for example, the latest ones, when we get a new one, they can travel 400 to 500 miles between fill-ups, so that allows us to have more service on the street. The other thing is that we have a commitment to our contractors. When we put out RFPs for the transit service, as you know, our transit services are contracted out. One of the things they ask is, what's your fleet replacement plan? Because the maintenance and parts that they have to keep on the shelves for the buses is a big component of them operating and maintaining the vehicles on our behalf. So we have a commitment to our passengers to freshen the fleet. We have a commitment to our contractors in terms of fleet replacement plan. And overall, as any other department like Public Works or Aviation would tell you that operate large fleets, it's just a good practice to keep your fleet fresh.
And is it more costly if we are having to maintain older fleet?
That is correct, Councilwoman O'Brien. Maintenance costs go up and parts availability goes down.
Thank you so much, Chairman.
Are there any other questions? So can I have a motion for items 2 through 5?
So So moved.
Oh,
Madam Chair, go ahead.
go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, Madam Chair, that I believe that there are some questions still on items 4 and 5.
Oh, I apologize.
Sorry, I had texted Mario about questions, item 4 and 5.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I should have alerted you.
Yes, thank you.
And
Sorry.
Just so you know, Alan Stevenson, our Planning and Development Director, is here with Joshua Bednarik, Deputy Planning and Development Director, to help answer questions on these items.
So we heard from Bromley Paul earlier, and I agree with what he is saying. I don't think we need to add the WU code into this until it comes to council. There are some dynamics with the WU code, and I would like to know if we can move that out of this language.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, this RFP language that we have developed here has not been published yet, so we do have the ability to revise that language,
I just think we need to finish the process on it and then be able to add it back in if necessary.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, this is Alan Stevenson. And so as part of the text amendment that is out there being discussed today, and I apologize I did not hear all of Mr. Pollin's comments, but as I understand them, he's concerned, and you're concerned, Councilwoman Pastor, about the grant processes in 4 and 5 that are on the agenda today, having a WU code element as part of them until we go through the planning process. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so I think we can, as was discussed by Mr. Coleman, we can adjust the RFP. I would just comment that the WU code is something that it wouldn't be put in mass within that area. It only as applying today in the city along the existing light rail line, and in the future, however council may decide to act on the current text amendment with it citywide, is on an individual case-by-case basis. So even if it's in this planning process, it doesn't guarantee anyone the right to rezone property to that WU code. And so we would there's no implied or guarantee based upon it being part of this RFP and discussion about it. It's simply a tool that we use to implement the plans once they are adopted and go through that process, as you know, Councilwoman.
So then do we just take it out and just say all codes, or what is your recommendation? But my second, wait, Ellen, before you answer, this is going on the TUD, right, or TOD. This is where WU code lives, right, on the transit-oriented development.
Madam Chair, Councilman Pastor, correct. Currently, the WU code is applicable along the TOD lines. What we would propose is, once the planning process is done for the items under 4 and 5, that the WU code would apply in those areas here. By taking that out, it's removing the ability to discuss it, and I think that discussion is probably a good thing that we want to have with the community in those areas as we're doing the planning process, so we can hear from them about what things they might want tweaked with the WU code in those particular areas. So, for example, the WU code has character guidelines in it that are based upon the Reinvent Phoenix planning process, and those character plans, the TOD station area plans that were developed. And so there are elements of the WU code that are different based upon those character areas, and taking it out of it at this point means we wouldn't be able to have that discussion with the community. And I think we want to have the discussion with the community, but I do think that we can note as part of this that we understand that there are some concerns about how it gets applied, and we want to work through those with the community in that area, as well as the mayor and council on the larger text amendment that is out there.
Yeah, And so I just realized there's two separate things happening. One is the larger discussion of the WU code to be removed out of the TOD, and not removed, but expanded or really going citywide. Currently, the WU code is situated in the TOD, which is this plan. And the WU code is in place, particularly for this plan, because it is on, we are applying it to the TOD. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilman Pastor, you are correct. We
Okay.
would want to continue to do it along the TOD, which would be an outgrowth of the planning process that we would undertake in items 4 and 5 on the agenda. And whether or not it gets adopted in citywide, as the current text amendment is proposed for individual zoning cases to be applied for, that's a separate question that the council can ultimately decide in December if it stays on its current track.
Okay, I now understand. Thank you. Thank you for the dialogue.
Thank you. So we have a request to take item 3 separately. So may I have a motion on items 2, 4, and 5?
Move to approve.
Oh, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? It passes unanimously. Okay, can I get a motion on item 3?
Move to approve item 3.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
No.
It passes 3-1. Thank you. Thanks for the questions as well. The next items, 6 through 9, are info. Does anyone have any questions? Then we will move to item 10, the Comprehensive Roadway Safety Action Plan. I think we're being joined by Keeney. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We are here today to provide an update to the subcommittee about our progress and efforts on comprehensive roadway safety. It is a sobering topic and one that cannot be ignored, and my team and I are so grateful that the Mayor and Council unanimously provided direction and approval to us to move forward with this effort. We're going to provide a lot of information for you today, and some of it might be a refresher for some for the presentation and discussions we had earlier in March when we were provided with that direction. But I also know that Councilwoman O'Brien joined the Council and Subcommittee since we had our last presentation about roadway safety, so I know it would be beneficial for her. The item is for information and discussion and possible action. I will get into the possible action later in the presentation. With me today is Brianna Velez, our Assistant Street Transportation Director. We will both be taking you through this presentation. Up. Just bear with us a second there, Madam Chair and members of subcommittees. We're getting the presentation up. All right. So here's a quick overview of the presentation we're going to do today. We're going to be covering safety trends and crash data, some update on where we are with the Roadway Safety Action Plan and its development, and then an update on our near-term safety improvements that were approved as part of the action back in March. So the first couple of slides are ones that we showed back in March, but they really do indicate the significant issues we have here in Phoenix. These are statistics from the National Highway Safety Administration data for a total of average fatalities from 2017 to 2019. Over those 3 years, you can see that Phoenix has had the third highest number of roadway fatalities nationwide, behind only Los Angeles and Houston. However, looking at the same data, but normalizing it for a per capita population analysis, in this case, total fatalities per 100,000 persons. Over those 3 years, you can see Phoenix has had the 6th highest number of roadway fatalities nationwide, behind cities such as Memphis, Detroit, Albuquerque, Jacksonville, and Dallas, but also ahead of the Los Angeles and Houston, who ranked ahead of Phoenix in total fatalities. So to put it bluntly, based on this data, Phoenix is the worst large city nationally when it comes to traffic fatalities. We love to be number one in a lot of areas, but this is absolutely not one of them. So furthering this discussion, in Phoenix we've had over 30,000 crashes every year, which amounts to about 85 crashes every day. We know these crashes vary in severity. Those crashes result in 2 serious injuries every day, and sadly, 1 death on our roadways every other day. If you want to put this in perspective, for those who travel, the number of deaths on our roadways could fill a 737 every year. Taking this data a little bit further, I wanted to cover some data from the last few years, including what the COVID pandemic has meant for safety on our roadways. This is data on our roadway fatalities, including bicyclists, pedestrians, and motor vehicles, which includes drivers and passengers. Reviewing data for 2019, you see we had 7 pedestrian or cyclist deaths on our roadways, 78 pedestrian, and 87 motor vehicle only related fatalities. Now, when we transitioned to 2020, obviously the impact of the pandemic. So what did that do to those same numbers on our roadways? Well, we did have both lower fatalities on the bicycle side and the pedestrian side, but we saw our numbers of motor vehicle only crashes and fatalities skyrocket during that month of 2020. So then, obviously, this is our kind of coming out of the pandemic. What does that look like for 2021? So if we look at just the first 6 months of data, so from January through June of this year, we're at 4 fatalities involving bicyclists, 52 involving pedestrians, and 58 involving motor vehicles. So if you look at that across our what could potentially be annualized numbers, we are on pace to exceed both 2019 and 2020 on an annual basis.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. You said in 2020, motor vehicle fatalities went up. So what was the cause of that?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Councilwoman Pastor, that's something we are working on the analysis of what the reasons for those fatalities are, but that is something we've actually seen nationwide, not just in Phoenix here, where it could be related to some of the fewer traffic on the roadways, but higher speeds. But the causality, we don't have the answers for that, but that's part of what we're looking at. But that was what the numbers are showing, that we did have motor vehicle fatalities going up during the pandemic.
Yeah, I get that, but then understand giving us the data, but then I also want the backup of the cause and proof of what's causing this data to go up. So that's why I'm asking the question.
And
thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, and I don't want to not answer your question, but I think that's also part of what we're doing. The Roadway Safety Action Plan is utilizing the data and the details of the data. So I may not be able to answer on this slide, but I think that's part of what we're doing with the Roadway Safety Action Plan, to be able to look at the numbers and determine why those numbers are happening, whether it's something engineering perspective that we can fix on our roadways, if it's something on a driver behavior that we need to address as well.
And when will you get that information? At what point will we have that information to analyze?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, that's something that I don't have an estimate right now, but that's something we can get back to as far as when we're working on the Roadway Safety Action Plan, when we'll be able to analyze the countermeasures, the safety countermeasures that might be necessary to address what happened in 2020.
Okay. So then the Roadway Safety Action Plan will be done when? So then we can analyze it.
So we're gonna get through that, Councilwoman Pastor, as we go through the presentation and talk about the timeline for that. But thank you. So to this map, which is also a map we shared back in March, this is the Maricopa Association of Governments map that they publish on an annual basis. It's a report on the top 100 highest crash risk intersections in the MAG region. The map on the screen shows the Phoenix metropolitan area in green. On the map, the red dots show the intersections in the top 20, while the orange dots show the intersections in the top 40, yellow and top 60, and orange and top 80, and finally the green in the top 100. And so the current MAG intersection list lists 73 of Phoenix's intersections in the top 100, and then 8 in the top 10. So that tells you exactly, Phoenix's intersections have a concern and issue from a safety perspective. So how are we going to actually reverse this trend, going to Councilwoman Pastor's question? The first and primary area is the development of our Roadway Safety Action Plan, which will serve as a roadmap for priorities and strategic investments to make our roadways safer. Our team has already developed a graphic to accompany our work and outreach for our action plan. Now I'm going to turn it over to Brianna, and I will come in near the end. Brianna.
Thank you, Keeney. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, this action plan is an 18-month community and stakeholder-driven process with the intent of understanding their priorities and developing a roadmap for implementing roadway safety programs and actions modeled on the 4 E's. The process began this summer with the discovery phase, which was focused on data collection and multiple internal discovery workshops. The 2 interdepartmental goals and visioning workshops were held on September 28th and October 15th. The project team is starting to work on the safety tools and implementation process, which will run through spring 2022, which is the development and modernization of evaluation tools. This winter through spring 2022, the focus will be on development of the Roadway Safety Action Plan strategies related to the 4 E's. This concurrently begins with the first community engagement opportunity to provide input and comments on roadway safety concerns in Phoenix. In spring 2022 through fall 2022 is the safety integration phase, which is the development of crash data analysis tools. Then in spring 2022, this will be the second community engagement opportunity to provide input and comments on the Roadway Safety Action Plan strategies related to the 4 E's. Then in winter 2022, the final Roadway Safety Action Plan will be delivered for implementation. Community engagement is a crucial element of the Roadway Safety Action Plan. The first step of the public involvement plan was to create a website specifically for this important effort to inform the public on the project and obtain meaningful input from the community. The website is currently live and can be found at Phoenix.gov/streets/road safety. The website will provide continuous up-to-date information on progress of the action plan and opportunities for engagement. Here is a view of the website that was developed for the Roadway Safety Action Plan. You will see that we have announced and are taking registrations to attend the first virtual public meeting scheduled for November 16th at 6 p.m. In the upcoming weeks, staff will launch a MetroQuest survey on the website to inform and engage the public about the project and obtain feedback on their priorities. Meaningful community engagement is vital for the success of the Roadway Safety Action Plan. Engagement with the community is planned to occur at 2 citywide meetings and 8 council district-specific meetings during 2 phases of the process for a total of 20 meetings. These meetings will provide an opportunity to listen to the public and hear their priorities and to understand that the needs of one area of Phoenix may not be the same as another area of Phoenix. As we develop the Roadway Safety Action Plan, it will be important to engage the community and hear their feedback. The input of those who travel Phoenix's roadways, whether driving, biking, or walking, will be key to make the streets safer for everyone. Streets has been proactively investing in the 4 E's of traffic safety. The Roadway Safety Action Plan will further integrate the 4 E's and provide a roadmap for the city to concentrate on a safety-first proactive stance in reducing roadway-related fatalities and injuries. Evaluation and engineering really focus on utilizing data to identify infrastructure improvements, which can greatly improve roadway safety. In addition, education and enforcement are key components to addressing overall traffic safety, as the focus is on modifying roadway user behavior. With respect to evaluation, staff is working to automate crash analysis and reporting, which will provide quicker access to new crash data, which will allow staff to identify the program safety measures more quickly. There is also an effort to link crash types to implementation strategies based on the 4 E's. The project team is also focused on developing processes to integrate safety into the project development process, and modernization of data tools and the warrant analysis for traffic signals, hawks, and left turn arrows is also underway. The project team has been hard at work to utilize crash data to develop the high injury network. The graphic on the right is Phoenix's high injury network that was developed utilizing Phoenix crash data. We recognize that you most likely cannot see the graphic on the right, so we will dive more specifically into it on the next slide. While developing the high injury network for Phoenix, we used a standard deviation for injuries and fatalities at both intersections and roadway corridors. As I zoom into the high injury network near 43rd Avenue and Indian School Road, you will see a significant number of intersections and roadway corridors along Indian School Road and 43rd Avenue that have been identified as high injury locations. A high injury network is very helpful in identifying and prioritizing locations for future investment to reduce traffic fatalities and serious injuries. With respect to the engineering component, Streets utilizes data to identify high crash locations and determine the appropriate countermeasure. Traffic signal modernization is a proven traffic safety measure for vehicular traffic. Buffered and protected bike lanes provide protection for people riding bicycles, and hawk signals improve safety for pedestrians at high or critical crossing locations. Streets currently has several existing programs that focus on addressing roadway safety issues through infrastructure improvements such as the annual signal modernization program, installation of new hawk signals and street lighting through the Office of Pedestrian Safety, and securing safety grant funding to implement other safety improvements. Traffic mitigation is another program that utilizes striping and signing and speed humps and speed cushions to deter excessive speeding and cut through traffic. The education component is truly a partnership between Streets and sister city departments. Over many years, Streets has rolled out several education and safety campaigns and will continue to identify additional areas for future education campaigns. In the spring and fall of 2021, Streets partnered with Maricopa Association of Governments and several neighboring cities in the See Me AZ campaign. The focus of this 2-week education and enforcement campaign was to inform people about their roles and responsibilities for safely sharing the road and to change people's behavior to reduce roadway incidents. Staff will continue to identify and partner on all opportunities for regional transportation safety campaigns. Streets and the Phoenix Police Department will work in partnership in the development of the Roadway Safety Action Plan. This includes evaluating data analytics that can assist police with education and enforcement. As the Roadway Safety Action Plan is developed, Streets is also focused on the implementation of near-term safety improvements at 3 locations from the MAG Top 100 list. The traffic safety improvements will be implemented in a 2-phase approach. The first phase improvements will primarily modernize the traffic signals at each location. The improvements include a traffic signal head above each through lane, intersection lighting, and flashing yellow arrow capabilities, to name a few. Phase 1 construction will begin this December. The Phase 2 improvements may require easements, right-of-way acquisition, or utility relocations, which have an impact on delivery timelines. Phase 2 improvements could include additional streetlights on the approaches, signing and marking modifications, and evaluation of additional crosswalk enhancements. The 3 intersections on the MAG Top 100 list specified for safety improvements are 75th Avenue and Indian School Road, 19th Avenue and Southern, and 16th Street and Camelback Road.
Thank you, Brianna. Now, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we are diligently working on the completion of our Roadway Safety Action Plan. But as we have highlighted, our efforts will be focused on our community, getting their input and feedback, using data to help us develop and implement safety solutions, and using the plan as a strategic tool to help prioritize those investments to save the most lives. It is truly a plan to reduce the number of deaths on our roadways and make them safer for all, no matter how they use or interact with our roadways. Now, I know, Madam Chair, you had expressed an interest recently about how Phoenix might be able to bring or incorporate Vision Zero into our current efforts. Vision Zero is a movement both nationally and internationally that takes seriously the goal of eliminating roadway fatalities, with the idea that one death is too many. This conversation couldn't be more timely. I would note at the federal level, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that is currently being debated in Washington has specific programs and funding tied to the promotion and support of Vision Zero efforts. Now, since this legislation hasn't been approved, we aren't sure how those funds, if they are approved, would benefit cities who have embraced Vision Zero, but there is strong likelihood that there will be a connection to the federal funding. So I want to highlight some things that we are doing with the Roadway Safety Action Plan currently that are consistent or in line with the kinds of things that a Vision Zero community would undertake. So we already mentioned community engagement. That is a strong aspect of both our action plan that we're working on right now, but also when you're engaging in a Vision Zero community. Having a strategic plan. So basically, that's what our Roadway Safety Action Plan is a strategic plan on how to prioritize investments to make our roadways safer. That's a key component of a Vision Zero community. Then also using that strategic plan to implement projects, to direct resources and funding to actually implement projects that make our roadways safer. That's exactly what we're working on. That's something that would be consistent with what a Vision Zero community would do. Using data, we've been doing that through our Office of Pedestrian Safety. It's something we are doing as part of this Road Safety Action Plan, as well as using data that comes out from these collisions, these crashes that are happening on our roadways, the deaths, the serious injuries, to be able to figure out what's going on out there to be able to make changes. Equity approach. That's another one, is where are these collisions and injuries and fatalities happening? That's what we want to use the data to be able to look where we can prioritize those investments to help those communities, especially those who are underserved, who may be disproportionately impacted by roadway and safety issues. And this is something you are all familiar with, is our hotspot, using hotspot through the data to be able to identify those locations. That's part and parcel of both types of these plans. and then evaluation of the impact. So what happens after we do those safety improvements? What is the benefit, or what is the after result of making those investments and making our roadways safer? And then obviously identifying where it's part of the prioritization process, those top risk factors on our roadways, where we have investments to be able to make them safer. So to further this kind of discussion, or the thought process, I've identified 4 core elements for Vision Zero communities. The first one is a public high-level ongoing commitment. The other one is authentic engagement, strategic planning, and project delivery. Now, I've kind of already talked about this 2, 3, and 4 because those are part and parcel of what we're doing with the Roadway Safety Action Plan currently. But with a Vision Zero community effort, the one thing that is noted is having a public high-level ongoing commitment. That usually comes in the form of some kind of resolution or direction from the policymakers to be able to say, this is what our goal is as a city, to be able to address roadway safety, to reduce and eliminate roadway fatalities. So this brings us to the potential action I referenced at the beginning of the presentation. There's a potential that if the subcommittee was so wanted to take action, is to have a Vision Zero resolution. This is something that's common with Vision Zero cities, to direct staff to prepare a resolution for consideration and action at a future council meeting to bring Vision Zero into what our efforts are on the Roadway Safety Action Plan. The other one is a potential Vision Zero's next steps. So we're having this discussion starting today. If this is something that the subcommittee is interested in, we would do further research to determine exactly what we need to do, the detailed steps behind there for Phoenix to become a Vision Zero community. Now, I did want to circle back before I complete the presentation with Councilwoman Pastor's questions about the data. Even though we have the 2020 data, we do have that with us, and we have the reasons why those fatalities happen. So we do have the information that we have, and we'll be happy to share that with you. It's just the other part of that is you may understand what happened in the collision, but there's also trying to figure out what the trends or reasons behind that. There's what you can observe out there when police goes out there to investigate a collision that involves a serious injury or fatality. But there's the part that we need to understand from our perspective is what measures what measures can we take to be able to address that safety issue that's out there. So hopefully that addresses it, and that's part of what we're working on, the different tools and measures that we're doing as part of the action plan. But with that, we'll be more than happy to entertain any questions or discussion that the subcommittee members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Keeney. We have a number of speakers. I think I'd like them to go ahead before we take questions and comments from the council. So I will turn it back to staff to call the names.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, our first registered speaker is Ryan Boyd, who's registered in support of the item. Ryan, are you on the line?
Yes, may I proceed?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Stark, members of the subcommittee here. For the record, Ryan Boyd at 1069 West Taylor Street with the Urban Phoenix Project, in support of the Roadway Safety Action Plan, and more importantly, in support of adding the Vision Zero elements. I wanted to thank you, Councilwoman Stark, for bringing this up and flagging this and being a champion, and also thank Councilwoman Pastor for voting with us back in 2019. There was a lot of misinformation back then and some things that really this presentation has shown it was not really what it was and what needs to be done now. And so what I mean by that is that there were some concerns in the past about, is this going to be a one-size-fits-all plan or something like that? And it's not. Vision Zero is about engaging people directly in those communities and applying these best practices that staff have identified and putting those tailored to the communities to make sure that we can reduce deaths to zero. It's about saving every life. It's about saving the pedestrians. It's about saving the bicyclists. It's about saving the motorists. It's making sure that when we know people make mistakes on the road, that those mistakes do not turn fatal. That's the greatest tragedy here, and that's what Vision Zero stands for, is saying that any fatality on the road is a tragedy that we should not view as acceptable, and that we should, again, really focus on designing the streets in a way that basically makes it so even when mistakes happen, they don't result in deaths. We think that this would be the appropriate time to add that Vision Zero. Throwing in a resolution as well as next steps would be an amazing step forward. And, we'll continue to have these conversations with staff. We'll continue to have these conversations with council about the next steps, whether that's protected bike lanes, whether that's investing in more transit. All of that can come on after, but we think that this is so critical to say that the city of Phoenix views any death as unnecessary here, and really we need to work towards preventing deaths at any scenario. Thank you for your time. Hope you will vote yes.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, our next speaker is Michael Connolly, who is in support of the item. Michael, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. How are y'all today?
Fine, thank you.
And I'm Michael Connolly. I'm with one of the block watches, Tomahawk Block Watch on the west side. I'd like to just comment. By the way, we're in Betty Guardado's, Councilwoman Betty Guardado's area, and she's been working with us on several projects, so we appreciate that. But here, let me get off to the comments. Personally, I've just to let you know, 75th Avenue and Indian School, just to let you know some of what I've seen, a couple of comments. This is back during the summer. I actually headed south on 75th Avenue off of Indian School, and the traffic, I've never seen so much traffic on the street. I'm not really sure what was going on. I felt like I was over in California. The other thing that I see occasionally, and I know that all of you see, and it's not specific to 75th Avenue and Indian School, but it's everywhere. You will see, cars speeding, singly by themselves, or they're racing one another. And that's outside of some of what I believe you're talking about. But to go on to another comment, I actually contacted a couple of our Block Watch members, and a lady by the name of Kathy let me know there's a stoplight that is just north of Indian School at 75th Avenue. It's Sells. It's kind of the cross street is Sells and 75th Avenue, and she mentioned that she has seen cars actually go through the red light racing out there. So it's a nice wide street, so I can see why that would happen. But I'm just kind of giving you a feel for what's happening, and I'm glad you targeted 75th Avenue and Indian School as one of your focal points. The other comment came from a lady by the name of Juana. One of the things that she noticed that if you have construction or the freeway is closed down, of course, people move to other routes. And so that crowds the streets north of I-10 there. And that pretty much.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, our next speaker is Cindy Gahn, who is registered in support of the item. Cindy, are you on the line?
I am on the line.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I serve as a Senior Director for Phoenix Community Alliance, PCA, a 38-year-old business leadership advocacy organization working to create a stronger downtown for a better Phoenix. I speak today on behalf of the PCA Board of Directors and its members. The PCA Multimodal Connectivity Committee Public Policy Agenda for 2021 includes advocacy for safe streets. The Comprehensive Roadway Safety Action Plan is vital to improving the safety of our roads, not only in downtown Phoenix, but also throughout the city. Our residents, employees, and visitors trust the city to provide streets that are safe for all who walk, bike, scoot, ride transit, and yes, drive on them. This data-driven safety plan will serve as an important guide to identify and prioritize much-needed roadway safety improvements to our streets. As Kenny stated, we understand that there are federal dollars that may be available in the future to support local transportation safety initiatives, such as efforts using data, partnerships, safe planning, and community-focused solutions to achieve zero traffic fatalities. Being able to tap into those funds to support safer Phoenix roads is a valuable consideration. We respectfully ask you to support the Comprehensive Roadway Safety Action Plan, and thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, our final speaker for this item is Corey Kincaid, who is registered in support. Corey, are you on the line?
I am.
You may proceed.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the time and the opportunity to speak. Corey Kincaid here. I'm located at 845 North 3rd Avenue in Phoenix, and I'm also involved with the Urban Phoenix Project Foundation. Specifically, two or three points here that I'd like to make as it relates to this, the Roadway Safety Action Plan, and specifically the inclusion of Vision Zero. As the data and the presentation from city staff clearly showed, this isn't a new problem for Phoenix, right? It's been a growing problem, and it's a systemic challenge. And systemic challenges need to be faced with systemic change, and they also need to be sustained change. And the best way to do that is with evolving the policy. And so I know that city staff, many people in city staff have spent many years doing what they can to continue to improve the transportation network and to improve safety and other items as well. But we know that what the current approach is not enough. And so the opportunity to include Vision Zero as an element of this roadway safety action plan, I think, is critical, because this can provide a clear guiding light back to that goal and objective around ensuring that everything that the city can do to minimize and eliminate crashes and deaths and fatalities, it is doing. And so as has been noted, it's not a extremely prescriptive item. It's not an item that should be considered scary or radical by anyone involved, but it does provide a clear statement and a clear guiding principle. And since these opportunities to explore meaningful policy changes don't always arrive all the time, I think it's very critical that this gets considered and included as part of this roadway action plan. And I appreciate your consideration of that. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers for this item.
Okay, thank you. And I have a quick question before I turn to others. Keeney, if we did adopt a resolution for Vision Zero, there's still a process that we have to go through, correct? It's not, because we adopt that doesn't mean that we're done. We need to still have the public process. What it does help us with is potential money for implementation, correct?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, that's our estimation, right? Correct. When we're looking at the bipartisan infrastructure, what it looks right now, that would potentially help us if we were known as a Vision Zero community, if as part of our action plan. I will let you know that there are some things that would change if we became a Vision Zero community, and that's some of the part of that we labeled out in the action is additional things that we can do to identify what steps the city would take to be able to become a Vision Zero community. But I think the major first step of that is the resolution, because that does drive home the policy piece and the vision of the city that which is adopting that Vision Zero concept of aiming for having zero fatalities on our roadways. So that's really a guiding principle, as kind of noted by one of the speakers as well.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions or comments? Councilwoman Guardado?
Thank you, Chairwoman. And again, thank you, staff, for Keeney and all staff for all of your hard work, and to continue to work diligently on the comprehensive roadway safety plan. Just yesterday, together with Keeney and members of our Parks Department, we went out and we evaluated 55th Avenue near the John F. Long Elementary School. We discussed ways to take a comprehensive approach and overlapping cool corridors with safe routes to school in our roadway safety plan to create an overall safer community. I know that the first phase of community engagement for the plan has been extended through the end of February of 2022, but we need to make sure that it's incredibly robust. I think it's thinking outside of the box in terms of how to, especially if we're thinking about incorporating Vision Zero. I definitely think that we need to make sure that we talk to everyone and that everyone feels that they were part of the process and part of the plan, or at least that the opportunity was out there for them to engage and let us know their feedback. I also believe that the feedback from our residents, again, it's critical. It's what's given us the success that we needed on all the different things where we have been successful. I think it's been because our constituents and the community has given their input. I know that my district office staff is eager to work with the street transportation department to make sure there is that robust engagement with our neighborhoods, and I am thankful for the efforts of the staff to make it happen. But I do also want to make some comments directly just about the plan itself. First, and I think we've talked a little bit about this before, Kenny. I would like to see the plan address how to create a more consistent citywide formula on speed limits and stoplight patterns, especially in areas with higher pedestrian traffic. I hear from constituents all the time about the westbound traffic that clogs our roadways in the peak post-work hours. I think looking comprehensively at the city speeds and stoplights could help alleviate some of these issues, because I do think that it's constituents that are now, I think it's creating such of an issue on Camelback and Indian School and Thomas, especially when you see then people speeding down the little small streets where you have a bunch of schools in those areas. I think that's causing, I'm sure a lot of those accidents, once you get us that data, will show that there's so many more accidents now in the small streets just because the bigger roadways are clogged up with so much traffic. Secondly, I think it is important for the plan to examine what state statute allows us as city to do to address street safety. I want to make sure that we stay clear of any issues, but I also want to know if there are state laws that need to be addressed by a legislator to improve street safety. So I don't know if there's some conversations that we need to have with Frank, maybe involving him, trying to figure out how is it that we try to talk to our friends at the state level to making sure that whatever we want to do at the city level, we're able to get some support on that, or at least we could try. And then finally, as a mother of two young students and as someone who has spoken to many parents of students, I think it's important to focus efforts on reducing speeds in a consistent way around our schools and city parks. Like I see, I think we talked about this before, like in Tempe, there's a lot of areas that from certain hour to certain hour, you cannot go more than 25 miles per hour because there's a school there. And I feel, and again, I'll go back to 75th Avenue, right? I mean, all the traffic, but then all the great things that we have on 75th Avenue, and we continue to see those accidents. And as you guys very well know, our Estrella Supermoms and other neighborhood groups have told us in the past how much an issue this is on 75th Avenue. I think we should hold off on anything other than maintenance for the time being. I think that we need to continue to figure stuff out and making sure that we stay consistent, especially around our schools. Just yesterday, my friend, let's see, what else? So we need to stay consistent. We need to make sure that we continue to work on 75th Avenue, around the schools, El Oso Park. I think we've been talking about this for a long time. And again, Kini, thank you so much for all of your hard work. I think you and your team have been doing a great job. I'm talking to my colleagues and myself about how is it that we continue to support you guys, and how do we keep this program going, and we continue to try to provide safe streets for all of our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other comments? Yes, Councilwoman Pistor.
I have some several observations. Roadway Safety Action Plan, what I would like to know is are we doing community engagement?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee. So just recently you probably saw we sent out to all the different council offices and the mayor's office information about our upcoming engagement efforts for the Roadway Safety Action Plan. Our first efforts that Brianna was noting in there. So the idea there is to be able to have a citywide meeting on November 16th. Then we'll be followed by council-specific meetings that we're going to do. So that's going to be really us introducing this topic to them, but also listening. We want to hear what each one of the council districts and the areas of city, what their concerns are, because the concerns in Maryville are different from those in Levine or in Willow or Arcadia. So we want to hear what the issues are as part of this, and so there is going to be a robust community engagement that's going to continue through the end of from the end of this year to the beginning of next year in 2022, early 2022, and that will help formulate as we go through this plan.
So the answer is yes, there is community engagement. Okay. Is there going after that a strategic plan?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, yeah, the Road Safety Action Plan itself will become a strategic plan because that's going to help. We're going to use that public input to direct our priorities along with other input that we're going to get as well as the data, and that will help direct and give guidance to the council to say these are measures we can do out there to how to more effectively invest our resources and time and energy to be able to reduce the incidence of serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways. So that's the whole goal of this plan, is to be able to come forward with a strategic plan for you and for the rest of the council.
Thank you. And then after that, we will implement the projects and we will use data-driven items.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And in this whole process, there will be an equity approach and a hotspot identification.
And that you hit it nailed right on the head, Councilwoman, is that our hotspot really does show where we have the equity concerns. And making sure we address the areas where we have the most significant need, not where it's, I would say, from the standpoint of squeaky wheel. It's really looking at the data, where do we have these issues, and those tend to be, as you can see from the heat map, where we have the traditionally underserved communities.
Which is my 27th Avenue, 35th, 43rd, 51st, 55th. So, and then in all of that, we're going to have evaluation of the impacts, and then identify the top risk factors, which I would say it's probably design of our streets.
That is definitely one of them, the design side. But I know we're going to identify things that are robust in nature to be able to look at both the infrastructure and engineering side, what we can do to work on making our streets safer. But we also know there's a behavior component, as Brianna pointed out in our presentation, that has to be addressed as well.
So my whole point in pointing that out is that I don't see the road safety action plan any different than the Vision Zero. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when Vision Zero failed, we looked at all the elements and said, all right, we still need a Vision Zero. And we came up with the roadway safety piece. And our whole vision was to have no more traffic deaths. Our concept is just named differently.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, I will say there's a very great number of similarities between what we're doing in the Roadway Safety Action Plan and what a Vision Zero community would be doing, as I kind of highlighted in the presentation. But there are differences, and that's one thing we could highlight if the subcommittee wanted us to move forward with this, to be able to do some further investigation to see exactly what those steps would be taking. But you're correct, as our intention with the Roadway Safety Action Plan is to reduce or eliminate traffic fatalities out there. Is it stated as such? No, but we're taking the steps necessary to be able to identify those safety improvements with that goal in mind.
Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor, this is Mario. I would just say yes, I agree that there is a lot of overlap between the two plans. That I think with Vision Zero, a couple of advantages that we've talked about is demonstrating to the community a stronger level of commitment to reducing, eliminating deaths on our roadways, given the severity of what's happening on the roads today, which seems to be continuing to worsen. It sets us up with a goal. I guess that's the one piece that in our comprehensive roadway safety action plan that we haven't actually specifically set that goal. zero deaths that brings. But then the other big one, I think, is an important one we've heard, is just the improvement of our competitiveness for the federal infrastructure funding that's going to be made available. So that's what we're seeking to do, is just help us along those lines.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Mario, if we didn't set up the goal of no traffic deaths, then as an elected, if we need to give you that directive, I will give you the directive, because that should be the goal, regardless if it's called Vision Zero or road safety.
Understood.
Because road safety should be, our goal is not to have any type of deaths. Pedestrian, bicyclists, or motorists. But I understand what you're trying to say, but I get it. And if Vision Zero, if by adopting a resolution for Vision Zero, and the reason why I'm saying this is because really, in all reality, what Vision Zero does for us, because we're doing a lot of the elements of it, is really working on the behavior. And the behavior of us driving, or us being alert when there's a bicyclist, or being alert when someone is walking, and being conscious of our speed and our behavior. And I'm speaking at this in a very large light, because I sit on NLC on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, and Vision Zero is a big topic and is part of the infrastructure package. And I understand we need to join with Vision Zero so that then we can also be competitive to implement a lot of these elements that are here in order to move forward and having no more traffic deaths. And in doing a resolution would help us also get additional funding. And that's what I'm hearing. I also heard from you.
Councilwoman Pastor, yes, that's correct. As we've examined the bipartisan federal infrastructure bill, it's clearly a component that they want to see the cities taking on, that Vision Zero approach. And so being a Vision Zero community, we believe, would make us more competitive for those funds.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up on that, Mario or Keeney, again, if we did a resolution for Vision Zero, there's still got to be a process. We still have to have all the community engagement. I think that's the important part of Vision Zero. I know that's kind of the way they did it in Tempe. I believe Tempe's already adopted Vision Zero, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, they have.
Councilwoman, good down.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, I think Kini and Mario, I think it's going to be important for you guys to come around to like really brief us on what Vision Zero, because Vision Zero was before my time. And so since then you have 4 new council members sitting on the council now. So I think it'd be good to get a briefing in terms of, what that is. I continue to hear that it's very similar to this, and that's all great. But then I think it's good for us to like really understand what Vision Zero is, and making sure, and then figuring out with us, because maybe we also have ideas. Okay, how do we mesh it all together, and how do we get the funding, and how do we help you? We want to help you do that. But I think it's also important for us to be able to understand what that is. I mean, I've heard things here and there, but as we're taking these votes, I think it's important to be able to hear it from you directly in terms of how we envision that would actually work.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Guardado, I would be more than happy to come and brief you and any of the council members on Vision Zero and what that would mean for us in Phoenix. So that's definitely something we can accommodate.
Keeney, I believe you're giving a presentation to the council at a future policy, correct?
Madam Chair, yes, I believe that we have at some point in the future a future policy meeting kind of similar to what we presented today, so we can inform and brief the rest of the council as well.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So since we're going to have a policy and a discussion, could that come out of the policy discussion, the resolution?
That was going to be my suggestion as well. Is that why don't you have something prepared, but then we can have a greater discussion with all the council. But that also gives you time to brief the newer council members on Vision Zero. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, Madam Chair, sorry. Yes, that makes sense. That would give us plenty of time to be able to do that.
Perfect. So why don't we do that? You can prepare something and have it ready for discussion at the council policy.
We'll absolutely do that, Madam Chair.
You know, the other thing too is maybe, because I know Tempe has adopted Vision Zero, maybe include in the presentation what they did, what process they went through as well. Might be helpful, or if you can just brief the council individually.
We can do that, Madam Chair. We definitely have information about what other Vision Zero cities, including Tempe, have done. But I wanted to continue to stress that just being a Vision Zero community doesn't mean you don't have a tailored plan that would be working for Phoenix. And I think we've identified that all along, that whatever we deal with when it comes to roadway safety has to be unique and specific and tailored to Phoenix, so it works for us.
Right. Yeah, my brother lives in Portland, Oregon, and they have Vision Zero, and you're correct. They had a process, and they tailored it to that particular city, which has a much more robust light rail going through. So, Councilwoman Pastor, do you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted to also make sure that during policy, as we've had this discussion, maybe you also identify from the roadway safety plan how how we're already doing the work and how it complements the Vision Zero piece. That way we can see it in a high level piece of okay, this is where Vision Zero complements these pieces,
right? Or
where our gaps are.
And Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, that's exactly, I think, between what the Madam Chair just said and what you said, Councilwoman Pastor, we've got the two potential actions that were in that my slide covered as far as developing a potential resolution and also identifying the next steps and things like that that would be in concert or potentially, additions to what we're doing on the action plan side right now currently.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any other comments? So I guess instead of a motion or action, you're just going to bring all the information to our council policy, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair. We'll make sure to prepare based on the direction that we've heard here at this meeting for that policy meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's go on to item 11. And that is Keeney again. We got him busy today.
and actually, Madam Chair, it's both Keeney and Brianna still. So,
welcome, Brianna.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, good morning. We're here today to share information about our comprehensive micromobility program. As you know, the city had a bike share program primarily focused on the downtown area, but also it is operating a little bit outside the downtown area. That bike share program is no longer operational as the vendor opted to cease operations. Currently, we have a shared electric scooter program operating in the downtown area. Our presentation is to highlight street transportation departments and specifically our active transportation program team's efforts on plans for a micromobility program for Phoenix going forward. This item is for information and discussion, but no action at this time, but we would welcome input and feedback from subcommittee members. As I mentioned, Brianna's with me today, so she'll be taking you through the majority of the presentation, but before I turn it over to Brianna, I wanted to provide a brief background on what brought us here today. So what is micromobility? Well, it is any alternative transportation mode that can help our residents and visitors take relatively short trips as part of the need to get from where they are to where they want to go. It can include bicycles. It can include electric scooters, as we're working on right now, and it also can include electric bikes or e-bikes. So there's been kind of an evolution of shared micromobility that has happened, and the trend has been happening over the last 10 plus years around cities. And cities have been looking for ways to be able to support the needs of its community with these micromobility type trips. So kind of initially came out with the first bike share program that was launched in the U.S. back in 2010. Here locally in Phoenix in 2014, we launched our grid bike share program with the green bikes. And then 2017, there was a movement around the country, and even the city took some efforts to be able to allow for dockless bike share. Our vendor at that time, we did not pursue dockless bike share, but that was something that happened around the country, and you can see from the photo that's what happened with a lot of the dockless bike share, which created a lot of consternation about this type of a mobility solution. And then here we did something I think we did very, very well and in concert working with the council was the development of our e-scooter program for the downtown and how it's evolved here downtown. And so we would like to kind of talk about what's the next evolution of that, which is comprehensive micromobility. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon to kind of walk you through a little bit about our e-scooter program, but also take you through the micromobility part of our presentation.
Thank you, Keeney. The city launched the Downtown Shared Electric Scooter Pilot Program in September 2019 within the highlighted areas shown on the map. The e-scooter pilot program allows companies to operate a shared e-scooter service on city streets within downtown Phoenix under a permit-based program. Most recently, in March 2021, City Council approved an extension of the program through March 31st, 2022 to support micromobility options in downtown Phoenix and also allow staff time to explore a more comprehensive program. The current pilot operates within a 2-square-mile boundary in the downtown core and utilizes geofencing technology to create no-ride zones for government complexes, ASU downtown buildings, and Margaret T. Hance Park. With the vendor of the grid bike share program ceasing operations, e-scooters are the only micromobility option in Phoenix today. Before sharing information on a more comprehensive micromobility program, I wanted to take a little time to provide a revenue update of the pilot program to date. The fees established were intended to cover the cost of administering the program, so it is cost neutral to the city. For the 18 months of the e-scooter pilot program, the city collected about $40,000 in application and permit fees, about $55,000 in trip surcharge and relocation fees. Staff cost to administer the program thus far has amounted to about $63,000, and the city contracted with a scooter retrieval company, Sweep, for the first 12 months of the pilot, which amounted to about $111,000. The total revenue to date is about $95,000 with the city investment of about $174,000. Staff has worked with the industry and the vendors to monitor, evaluate, and modify the operation of the pilot program to ensure the program is cost neutral to the city. The contract with Sweep expired in April 2021, and the city ended services in an effort to reduce expenses. So we worked with the vendors to have them hire staff to proactively monitor and relocate improperly parked scooters. In addition, the program fees were increased in April 2021. With these changes, the program over the last 6 months has collected about $13,000 in application and permit fees and about $5,000 in trip surcharge fees. The cost to administer the program for the last 6 months amounted to about $15,000. The total revenue for the last 6 months is about $19,000 with a city investment of about $15,000. As the city moves from a downtown area e-scooter pilot program to a permanent, expanded, and more comprehensive micromobility program, a number of the elements of the existing e-scooter pilot program need to be evaluated. Staff conducted research to understand best practices of micromobility programs in various peer cities in order to design a program that best suits the needs of Phoenix. Some of the cities that provided information on their programs were Denver and Boulder, Colorado, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Tampa, Florida. Based on the research, cities commonly institute boundaries to control where micromobility vehicles can operate. Phoenix's current e-scooter boundary is unique in that it only allows riders to operate within a 2-square-mile area in the downtown core. Most other cities allow e-scooters and e-bikes to be used throughout their cities. Enforcement relies on geofencing technology, where global positioning system technology tracks vehicles and disables them once they leave the operating boundary. It is also common for cities to designate no-ride zones in high pedestrian traffic areas such as universities and prominent tourist sites, where riders are prohibited from riding micromobility devices. The existing pilot program has established no-ride zones, and they are geofenced to not allow riders. During the pilot program, the number one request we have had from the community is to expand the current boundary outside of the downtown core. Based on input from the community, staff has considered the possibility of expanding the program boundaries as part of a comprehensive micromobility program. Several national surveys suggest that shared micromobility programs can reduce car trips, can complement public transit usage, and support the overall transportation network. Staff is recommending an appropriate operational boundary expansion to allow for the program to cover and support existing and future light rail alignments with either a 1 mile buffer as depicted here. You will see the existing downtown boundary in pink, the proposed 1 mile boundary in light blue, the existing light rail alignment in green, and future light rail alignments in purple and yellow. There is also a 2 mile buffer that can be considered as depicted in this slide. Even with an operational boundary expansion, the program would still need to consider no-ride zones such as parks and government facilities. Many cities have a program with...
Can we wait a minute? I think, Councilwoman Pastor, did you have a question on a particular slide?
I did, and 16 in the expansion. And I'm not in a line with the expansion, and I did not see the expansion. And if we're going to do expanding this, then we're going out to every one of our communities that where these are going to be expanded into. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think you're suggesting looking at this, but you would have public involvement, correct?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I think the intent of this is really to introduce the concept of expanding it beyond the downtown areas and to collect feedback from the subcommittee. And if that's, I don't think it precludes us from doing public involvement and public engagement related to this. But that's part of the reason why we're presenting it today, is to get that kind of feedback.
And I think that's the feedback you're hearing from Councilwoman Pastor, is that we have to have community involvement. Thank you.
Many cities have a program with a mixture of e-scooters and e-bikes. However, e-scooters make up a strong majority of trips. The community has expressed the need for traditional pedal bikes. However, our research has found that pedal bikes are becoming less common in shared micromobility programs. Most micromobility vendors find e-bikes to be more popular and therefore more profitable, and have drastically reduced their offerings of traditional pedal bikes. Staff recommends Phoenix be open to all 3 micromobility devices as part of the program. Micromobility device fleet size varies among cities, and there is no standard methodology for determining appropriate size. Most cities take an iterative approach to arrive at their current cap. Most cities also dictate a maximum fleet size, and in some cases require a minimum number of vehicles to ensure availability and coverage. Cities have developed unique approaches and use technology to manage and mitigate parking for micromobility devices. A popular approach is the parking corral system, where users must end their rides within designated and marked parking locations within public right-of-way. This system uses GPS beacons to ensure devices end their trip within the corral. Currently, Phoenix is the only city that is 100% corral-based parking. The drawback is the cost to install and maintain the corrals, which become less feasible as operating areas expand. A low-cost alternative is the use of pavement markings, which can be applied easily but also results in reduced visibility. Another alternative is the use of lock-to parking requirements, where users are required to lock vehicles to fixtures or bike racks in the public right-of-way as long as it is compliant with the ADA. Lock-to is easier to enforce and more feasible in larger operating areas, but would require investments in adding public bike racks in the operating areas. As cities have launched and grown their micromobility programs, they have also sought to address equity concerns in their programs. Opportunity zones have been used to ensure an equitable distribution of micromobility vehicles in areas that have been determined by the cities to be historically underserviced. Alternative payment systems are another important facet of an equitable program. About 75% of micromobility programs offer alternative payment options for people without a smartphone, credit card, or bank account. Cities have also stipulated that vendors must offer discounted rates to riders living on low incomes. Roughly 83% of cities have some sort of discounted program. The fee structures used to recoup the cost of maintaining micromobility programs vary between cities. All cities have an upfront fee to cover administration costs in the form of an application and permit fee. Cities also typically charge a per-trip surcharge or a per-vehicle surcharge. Phoenix's current e-scooter pilot program fees are largely comparable to other cities and within the middle range of most cities.
So Phoenix's current program is operated through a permit process. However, cities across the nation are moving towards a request for proposal process to secure vendors for the shared micromobility programs because of the benefits of the competitive selection process. The RFP process allows cities to work with vendors to balance community needs with ensuring a profitable program. It also allows cities to narrow down the number of vendors in a transparent and fair manner. The timeline to complete an RFP varies by the city, but typically takes about a year in City of Phoenix. However, staff has worked with our partners in the finance department to complete an RFP potentially within 5 months, which aligns with the expiration of the current e-scooter pilot program in March 31st of 2022. Now, I will note, obviously, with the comments so far from the subcommittee members, the incorporation of additional public engagement and feedback, we'll have to evaluate what that impact does to the procurement schedule that we have draft right now. But that's something that we continue to keep both the subcommittee members and the remainder of council and the rest of the council as well informed about this. So given this, what are our next steps? The first thing would be to potentially establish a comprehensive micromobility program by April 2022, and that could potentially extend out with the public involvement engagement that was mentioned earlier. Our intent would be to issue an RFP to contract with at least two vendors, up to two vendors, and that allows us to have both flexibility and if something was to happen with one of the vendors, but it gives us the ability to continue that program. And also, some vendors may not offer the same types of devices and extent as others, so it gives us the ability to be able to diversify our vendors. The other part is something that has been brought up recently as we looked at this, is amending the Motorized Play Vehicles Ordinance, which is something that goes back decades in our city code related to the use of micromobility devices in the public right-of-way. So it would attempt to be able to address that to make sure we're allowing e-bikes, scooters, and such, and other micromobility devices that are developing in here to be used on our roadways, whether it's through a program like ours or as those become options for our residents out there to buy them themselves. So that concludes our presentation, but we're more happy to answer any questions or hear any comments that the subcommittee members may have.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I do.
Oh, Councilwoman Pastor.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
So I think that needs to be added to next steps is to do a community engagement in all the area that's getting expanded. I would like to see bikes added to this. This says e-scooters and e-bikes most popular, but I want a whole package deal of bikes included that are not e-bikes. I want to talk about the parking requirements because I can't even remember who was sitting on the committee. We did a great, I commend my colleagues in doing what we thought was best for the downtown area and what we thought was safest. And safety was always at the forefront. And so I want to talk about the parking requirements and what does that look like? And how do we, in expanding, I'm not really sure why we're moving away from what we did in downtown to now broadening, making it broader. So I would like to know about that.
Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor, all great questions. And so when staff was looking at the possible boundary expansion, I think we all recognize that replicating the corral system outside of the downtown area would be very difficult just because of the cost to implement and maintain that. And all of those costs are passed on to the vendors. And so really we in talking with other cities, we wanted to see that had larger operating areas, what benefits they saw in other options. So what we saw was the lock-to parking seems to be a direction that several cities are going. City of Chicago and City of Minneapolis are two of the cities that implemented lock-to parking. And we think if City Council was interested in doing an expansion of the boundary, that the lock-to parking would probably be the best solution for Phoenix. That would require all of the vehicles to be locked to either vertical devices in right-of-way and or bicycle racks. That would require the city, in working with the vendors, to roll out additional bicycle racks in the operating areas to make sure we have enough so that the mobility devices could be locked to those elements. I think what the city of Chicago had shared with us was that they saw a reduction in parking issues, about 95% once they moved to the lock 2 parking.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think about where I'm looking at your map and how you're planning to expand. Where, if it's in the right of way, I think of 7th Street, I think of 16th Street, I think of 7th Avenue. Where would you put the lock 2 parking in visualizing this expansion? Because I know those streets and they're not wide enough and there's not a lot of right of way.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, staff would definitely need to go out and identify opportunity areas. I know when we were working on the initial pilot program, there was a lot of interest from some of the businesses in downtown that were interested in also increasing their public bicycle parking on private property, and that may be something of interest. But I think we could go back as staff and take a look at opportunities within these areas. We've also had discussions with public transit about partnering with them to look for opportunities to provide parking in and around the light rail stations.
Okay. So I guess I think this is for discussion only, but in your next steps, and I don't know if I need to make a motion, but first of all, the community engagement, and second of all, I would like to see mapped out where the lock 2 would go in this expansion and how it would be done. Because we're going to set out an RFP and it may not work. And that's what I'm worried about. I'd rather have a successful RFP and do some of the pre-work before we do an RFP, and then you come back and say, well, this is not going to work. We have to adjust it or redo it. So I don't know. I mean,
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, I think your comments are sufficient for us to be able to move forward with further vetting those things, whether it be the public engagement side, whether it's the operating boundaries, whether it's, we've got your input now on the different types of devices you'd like us to see with this. And I think also the other part is the lock 2 technology or however we expand outside the boundaries of the downtown area and how those parking requirements would be enforced. So that's something that we can take your feedback and input on. It doesn't necessarily need to be in an action motion or anything like that. But we'll definitely work with your office and any of the other council offices as well to make sure we've got your concerns addressed before any RFP or procurement goes out.
yeah, I mean, I just think we have to look at these things, look at it. I'm not saying that you're not, but it's broad. So now let's narrow it, I guess is what I'm saying. Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay, I guess, Councilwoman Gardo. Sorry, Gardo.
Thank you. Yeah, Kenny, I just think I agree with the engagement. I know that we have a ton of people over at 19 North that would love to see these scooters out there, but I think making sure that I know that as I was coming onto council, I know that Councilwoman Pastor and others had worked really hard on making sure that we kept pedestrians safe as we were putting putting out in the streets, and that we had a comprehensive plan on how we made sure that they were put back in place. So I think it'd be good to figure before we put out the RFP, coming back to subcommittee before you actually do that. I think it's important. And then the other thing, it'd be nice to have like just one single company do this, whether it's, I don't know, Spin, I don't know. I can't remember all the names anymore. It feels like decades ago, but if we had just one company that we were working with, I think that would be nice. I don't know. I think in my 2 years of council, I think I've heard more about scooters than I would want to. And I know, Brianna, we've talked a lot about, well, this company now doesn't want to do this, and this company now pulled out. If we could just, say, okay, we're doing it. Here's the RFP. This is the company. This is who we'll give it to, and then we can hold that company accountable to whatever it is that the council, decides they want to go with, because they will abide by whatever our constituents would like to see with the scooters. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yes, Chairwoman.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to know, will you take into account the use of technology and innovation of the operators when expanding the pilot program? For example, right, they would shut down if they go outside the boundary, or their speed would be reduced if they're on a sidewalk. Could you include that into the RFP?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, when we did even the initial pilot program, we were evaluating the technology and how well that each of the vendors could perform and adhere to our technology, and we actually had some vendors who weren't able to initially. So that's definitely something that we will incorporate in any procurement to make sure we have an evaluation of what offerings they have from vehicle side, but also how that technology operates, and potentially even how that technology interacts with their customers as well. Because one of the things that we've actually done with a lot of the devices is making sure the vendors are providing safety information and operating information out to their users through their apps that they have for reserving this. But exactly, we will make sure that the technology that they have is considered, and whether they could operate with our geofencing or GPS restrictions and boundaries.
Excellent. And I think I saw this in the presentation. It looks like you were going to limit it to a maximum of 2 operators. Is that correct?
Yes. Right now, we have Councilman O'Brien is limiting to a number of vendors, but the primary reason is because you've got different technologies. You've got e-bikes, scooters, potentially pedal bikes, and now that we've talked about that, and we're not sure what vendors will provide which offerings. So there may be a vendor who doesn't want to provide pedal bikes, but another one may offer that. And so we want to make sure the best decision is made possible for operating a service like this in the city. So that's why we want to have the flexibility to have multiple vendors to do that. We might get with one vendor who has the ability to do everything we need to do it and the best terms and conditions of what their proposal is, but we want to make sure we have that flexibility in making the decision from a staff perspective.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe we have 2 speakers.
Wait, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I apologize. I paused too long because I was writing a note to Meg. And it looks like, based on the fees and revenues that you've shown us, that overall we don't have, it's not cost neutral, but things have certainly changed in the last 6 months. So can you tell us a little bit about what changed so that we've turned that tide?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, that's a great point. I think we wanted this, and the council wanted this to be cost neutral. And when you're doing a pilot program, you're trying to kind of fire a little bit and adjust, and that's what we kind of did throughout the program. And so we understood where our high cost points were, and what we could get. We also were working with the vendors to see what fees and surcharges they could support to be able to make sure their operations could continue. So the biggest issue was the scooter retrieval, and I think Brianna highlighted that, as we had a scooter retrieval contract that was the biggest source of cost for the city to operate this program. Once we worked with the vendors, and this is another reason why we want to limit it to a certain number of vendors, is we were able to work with them, and they worked collaboratively actually to employ staff to go out and do the work of a scooter retrieval company, so that they were able to identify those things that we were going to complain about or somebody else was going to complain about. So that's really been the biggest difference between the first 12 months of the program and the last 6 months of the program. So we really have turned that around and become actually revenue positive with the program. And I would also just highlight the work of the vendors. We appreciate their works and being a part of this, but also the council adopted increases in fees back in the spring as well, which we've increased some of the fees as well. So those together have helped out make this a revenue positive program over the last 6 months.
Excellent. I appreciate you explaining those, and kudos to the city and your department as well as the vendors for working cooperatively to make some of those adjustments. And then lastly, I too am concerned about the parking, especially if we expand out where these folks will be able to ride these. Are there any thoughts about potentially seeing if the vendors would provide docking stations and I think Brianna mentioned that some of the private businesses were looking at that, but maybe we could look into also incentives to make sure people want to park where they're supposed to park.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, I think operating boundaries and parking requirements are the two biggest issues we have to deal with, and I think both we're willing to work with any solutions, and we'll talk with the vendors as well to see what they're able to provide, to have some common docking stations that will work for multiple vendors potentially, but also work without obstructing the right-of-way or obstructing private property. If it's anything on private property, we'll have to work with those private property owners to make sure we have agreement with them to be able to allow the parking to take place there. But we're open to all different solutions that will help us to be able to grow and expand this the micromobility program so it's more available to more of our residents.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both of you, and to your department. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. And we have two speakers now.
Our first speaker for this item is Phuong Bui, registered in support. Phuong, are you on the line?
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment on the Comprehensive Micromobility Program. My name is Phuong Bui, and I represent Spin, one of the two companies currently operating shared scooters in the city. We are an independent subsidiary of Ford Motor Company and is committed to working with the city that we operate in. And firstly, we wanted to thank the street department for their partnership during the last 2+ years. We wanted to call in and extend our support for staff's proposal to pursue a permanent program via a competitive RFP process to provide the city with safe, viable, and innovative mobility options. Based on our experience operating in over 90 cities and campuses, we think that Phoenix can best benefit from a system with up to 2 qualified vendors who are able to provide various devices to meet different abilities and preferences, as well as bring innovation to the city. We also support the boundary expansion to further complement Phoenix Comprehensive Transportation Network and the sustainability goals in alignment with the Climate Action Plan. A majority of cities allow operation of bikes and scooters citywide, while giving staff the administrative discretion to create no-ride zones based on ongoing community feedback throughout the program. We're also excited to continue working with staff and community leaders to pilot innovative technology like remote reparking of 3-wheeled devices and sidewalk riding detection on 2-wheeled devices. Again, we look forward to continuing our partnership with the city on developing a framework, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Cindy Gahn. Cindy, are you on the line?
I am.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to address the second agenda item, the Comprehensive Micromobility Program. Again, speaking on behalf of PCA's Board of Directors and its members. To provide some background, in 2019, PCA was instrumental in bringing the e-scooter program to Phoenix, advocating for the current pilot program in downtown Phoenix as an innovative and sustainable alternative to cars. Our Multimodal Connectivity Committee formed a subcommittee that worked closely with the City of Phoenix streets and police departments, convening downtown stakeholders, including the Downtown Phoenix Partnership staff, business owners, residents, and e-scooter companies. We provided a series of recommendations based on those meetings, most of which were incorporated into the current pilot program. PCA supports the concept of the proposed comprehensive micromobility program. In addition, we believe it's important to start the RFP process now and truncate the RFI process, ideally issued at the same time as the RFP, to bring this expanded program to fruition in an accelerated manner by the end of the current extension to March 2022. We support speed in delivering micromobility back to our city, the equitability aspects described by staff, diversity of shared micromobility types, including e-scooters, e-bikes, and yes, pedal bikes. And we have learned that the pedal bikes are especially appreciated by our visitors in particular. Also, for keeping corrals, expanding the boundaries, as well as the consideration of not requiring corrals outside of Central Phoenix. We look forward to learning more about the Lock 2 parking alternative and to working with the Streets Department to further the program with mindful consideration. As a side note, we understand the desire for a cost-neutral program. However, we do not believe it should be the highest priority for the comprehensive micromobility program, knowing that other desired transportation options in Phoenix, the 5th largest city in the country, are subsidized. We respectfully ask your support for this program, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I believe Councilwoman Pastor has some additional questions.
I do. In this process, Kini, I would like to look at injuries or any fatalities with any of these micromobility devices. And I would like to also know in our policy to include how we include micromobility in Vision Zero and what does that look like? And then my understanding, it is cost neutral.
Madam Chair, excuse me, Councilwoman Pastor. Yeah, we can definitely provide information on injuries and fatalities. Were you interested in those in just locally or also nationally?
Well, locally right now and nationally, if you can give me what the big cities, what it looks like. And then in the community engagement piece, could you incorporate what micromobility, I'm going to use the word devices, but I know it's not a device. Motorized, I don't know what you call it. What I want to know is which one they would prefer. Do they want an e-bike? Do they want a scooter? What is it that they prefer within their community? And in thinking this through, where would they, like, I think of the streets and where would you be parking an e-bike on the streets that are being recommended?
Councilwoman, we can definitely include as part of our public outreach process.
Yeah, I'm just curious of what is the most popular of need. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Are there any other comments? Well, thank you. I think, Kini, you have some good direction. Thank you for all your thoughts, Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mario suggested that we go for our next items, just go to the recommendations. I wanted to check with the members of the subcommittee. Are you okay with that? Okay, I see the thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, we'll turn it over to Marcus. Hi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Mario. We'll just for these next three items, we'll just go straight to the staff recommendation. We've done briefings with each of your offices, and in the packet, there's an extensive report on each of these items, but certainly open to any questions you may have. So we'll pull up the staff recommendation for the capital extension, which is to get recommended approval on the 19th Avenue option as the locally preferred alignment for that light rail project, and to get approval for our entry into an agreement with Valley Metro to fund the design of the project for up to $45.3 million. And would be happy to take any questions you have.
Are there any questions?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead, Councilwoman.
Did we determine it's Washington going west? I know there's a map. I can't read it.
Yes. Sarah, can you just move back to slide 21? Slide 21 here, Councilwoman, shows the recommended alignment, which continues west from downtown on Washington, and then goes down Washington all the way, shifts to Adams Street to 19th Avenue, and then comes back down 19th Avenue and back downtown along Jefferson. And then connects with our downtown hub. That is
so from the hub, if I'm catching it, is it Jefferson that I take to the Capitol, or it's Washington?
Washington would go to the Capitol, and Jefferson would bring you back.
Got it. I see it now. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Could I get a motion then?
I move item 12. I think it is.
Again?
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It carries unanimously. The next item is 13.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the subcommittee, item 13 is the recommendation for the I-10 West light rail alignment and confirmation that we're going to move forward with light rail as the recommended route, because we had studied potential other options like bus rapid transit. But based on community input and analysis, we believe light rail is the preferred mode for the I-10 West, and would like to get a recommendation of approval from the subcommittee on that.
One thing I would like to add to that is this also included the extension to the Desert Sky Transit Center.
Thank you.
Thank you. I move item number 13. Or make a motion for item 13.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries unanimously. And then item 14.
Yes, Madam Chair. Item 14 is approval to move forward with a study for potential light rail and high-capacity transit into the West Phoenix area, and we would include all the way out to 91st Avenue in West Phoenix. So the boundaries of the study would include from Camelback Road down to I'll have Marcus, because he knows this a little bit better.
So the study area would be from Central Avenue, our existing light rail system, out to 91st Avenue, with our southern border being McDowell and the northern border being Camelback Road.
Perfect. Are there any questions?
I have questions.
Okay. Please go ahead.
When you say from McDowell to Camelback Road, going what? What's the east and the west? How would that look like?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, the east and west, the east boundary would be Central Avenue. Our existing light rail system is along Central Avenue, and the west boundary would be 91st Avenue.
But I think
I know, but I'm looking at McDowell and Camel. Yeah.
So all the way, we're looking at all the corridors from in that area, from McDowell all the way up to Camelback. Actually, Camelback's probably not something we're looking at, because we've dealt with that one in the past.
That's the point.
It's more on those other corridors, potentially McDowell, Thomas, Indian School, as we look at those a little bit closer.
That's for. Is that for BRT? No, this is for.
This is potentially for light rail.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So didn't we look in the past at those streets?
Yes, so that we've done some background work on those streets, not all the way out to 91st Avenue, but so this would take another look at going west and really trying to serve that Maryvale area, knowing that the Camelback line in the past the council determined that wasn't going to work, so corridors south of there potentially we want to take a closer look at those going all the way west. And this would just be to study it and then bring back some potential options and recommendations for the council moving forward.
Have we looked at Bethany?
We have looked at Bethany in the past in terms of past studies focused on really how we were going to get light rail to the city of Glendale. And this was back when the city of Glendale had in their plans the addition of light rail, but they've since pulled out. They've since determined that they're not going to be moving forward, at least for now. And so Bethany was something that was looked at that time to get out to the city of Glendale was one of the options.
Okay, so you're going to look at these streets. Is there going to be public comment?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Marcus.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, there will be extensive outreach that will be done with the public. This will be something that is done with a strong public engagement piece of it and plan in order to put a recommendation together.
And I still think we look at, if you're looking at Camelback, we still look to go the 91st. I mean, let's just look at it. That would go all the way to 91st?
Yeah, we're looking at going all the way to 91st Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Chairwoman.
Chairwoman.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you so much. I understand that Camelback Road is just one of the options. I guess given that Camelback Road for several of those miles also borders Glendale, how might that work if Glendale's choosing not to be a part of?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, that is precisely what Mario was referring to earlier when we looked at the study of the original extension that was intended to have the participation of the city of Glendale. Now that they no longer participate, we have expanded that area of the high capacity transit study to ensure that we're able to look at other east-west corridors throughout that region, knowing that the participation of the city of Glendale is not an option at this time. Because it's on the border of our city of Phoenix and city of Glendale, we are able to still work within our right-of-ways, but we would not have the participation, which if we decided to do an extension down Camelback, we would need to look at our limited right-of-ways that we have within our jurisdiction, as well as it would only be funded through our local funds and whatever funds we could get from federal sources.
And I would just add to that given that circumstance, the fact that on the northern side of Camelback, once you get west of 43rd Avenue, you're in the city of Glendale, and so that's what makes Camelback such a challenge and not a real strong candidate for light rail for us moving forward. Given that light rail is not something that Glendale is doing right now, so. We would really be looking most closely at the corridors that are south of Camelback, but we just wanted to make sure that we included that in the study area as we study all the options.
Great, thank you so much.
Councilwoman Guardado.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman. So just a couple of comments. I just want to give thanks to Marcus and to Mario I know it's something that we've been talking about since I came into council. I was running for office the time when the line got killed to go into the west side, and I think having this opportunity to have that robust have that robust conversation with the different council districts, with District 7, District 4 and District 5, and and for all of us to like really figure out, okay, what is it that really makes sense, given everything that's happening in the West Side, and all the changes that we're making. Chris Mackey has two new dedicated staff just to the economic redevelopment to Maryville, that right now is being it's being hosted by Councilwoman Pastor and I. So we're definitely looking into like how is it that we revitalize Maryville, and what are the different things that we need to do there, and how is it that we make all these great things happen. So definitely, I think that light rail is something that a lot of neighbors will definitely welcome into their neighborhoods, as we're talking about how traffic is awful down Indian School and Camelback. I think this is something that will be incredibly helpful. But again, I'm committed. My office is committed to making sure that we get out there and we talk to constituents and we listen to them and we figure out where is it that this line can actually land. So we can, and we learn from our mistakes from the past as we continue to move forward and being able to bring something robust into that neighborhood. So with that, I just want to thank everyone, and I'd be more than happy to make a motion.
We have one speaker in support,
Okay.
so here we have
Okay.
that, and then
Yeah.
you can make the motion.
Perfect.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Ryan Boyd is registered in support of this item. Ryan, are you on the line?
Yes, and I'll make it quick. Thank you all for your hard work today. For the record, Ryan Boyd, Urban Phoenix Project, in support of this item, and just wanted to do a few things. First of all, thank Councilwoman Gridardo for all of her hard work. She's talked about reinstalling this West Light Rail for a very long time, and we're happy to get at a study and get that moving on the way. Secondly, also wanted to thank Chairwoman Stark and Councilwoman Pastor, because back in 2019 they voted against killing this line when it was brought up by a citizen petition, without community engagement, without going out and basically having these conversations, and really was against the will of the voter. So we think that this is a major step forward to really rebuild that trust, because we're going back and saying that what Phoenix voters adopted in Prop 104 should be considered, and let's have those conversations in the study area and make sure that we can provide high quality light rail for West Phoenix. And some of the comments that have been made about, oh, well, it doesn't go out to Glendale, there's still a lot you can connect to in West Phoenix. Grand Canyon University, some other interesting things in that area. We would just hesitate to have what people in 2019 would say was a train to nowhere. We don't think that Maryville is nowhere. We think that that is a great community that needs to be connected to the rest of the city. And so we ask for your vote and your support for this, and to keep this moving forward. And just thank you all for your time. Have a say.
Thank you. Oh, Councilwoman Pastor, you have a question?
I just want to make a comment to Marcus, because MAG is planning on adding those bridges. I don't know if they're called bridges, or those extensions on Indian School, Camelback, Thomas, and I want to say, I don't think McDowell, but they are supposed to start on Indian School. So I think in this study, what's that impact, or how is it going to be? How is light rail going to go over the bridge, and can it carry the weight of it? So I just think that needs to be incorporated.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We are working closely with MAG to make sure that they're fully aware of what we're looking at here for this potential light rail going out west, and that gets incorporated. I think we're actually going to be holding up on moving forward right now with the final design. Indian School was supposed to be the first one of those bridges over the I-17. We want to make sure that if we're going to move forward with this, that they're doing that in coordination with what we're doing. So thank you for your comments on that.
Thank you. Now, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve item 14.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? It carries unanimously. Next, we have call to the public. Has anyone logged on to speak?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we do not have anyone registered to speak for a call to the public.
And of course, you guys probably have looked at the future agenda items. Is there anything you want to add?
Yes, I have something.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I would like to request the addition of an item that addresses the passenger experience at Sky Harbor International Airport. I have heard from residents and continue to hear from them. And I know that it's a huge concern as well for our aviation department about limited food options and closed restaurants throughout the airport. I know that we recently fell in ranking in J.D. Power's most recent study of airport satisfaction. And I believe that it's urgent that we as a council have a discussion about how we're going to work with all of our partners to ensure we are maintaining the passenger experience. I know that employees are doing what they can with the limited staffing levels, but we need to find solutions to support our airport family and support everyone, the concessionaires, everyone that's traveling through the airport. It makes me nervous when I see a lot of those Yelp reports. So definitely, I think that I know that we're going to be having more conversations next week about it, but maybe trying to also figure out how do we continue to support people as we're trying to gear up to get back to some normalcy again.
Absolutely. We'll add that to the agenda. You want it next in November?
That would be great.
Okay, Perfect. We'll do that.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be November. I would like to add 27th Avenue. We were all working collectively together since it hits 4 different districts to really get a comprehensive plan on how we are going to focus on 27th Avenue and especially the pedestrian and the traffic and also even the bus.
Okay.
There are pieces in 27th Avenue that in my area that bus areas have been removed due to some of the safety issues. And so I want to talk about all of that on what we need to do.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you.
We'll add that. Anything else? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.